All right, episode number 16. Is that 16. What we are now?
I've lost count. It could be.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about less is more, using less plugins and getting better results.
Yeah, you don't need all that stuff.
No, you really don't. So I feel like in my personal experience, when I just focused on a couple different things and a couple different synthesizers, a couple different tools rather, I feel like my music is better because when I'm just piling on the plugins and piling on the sounds, it doesn't, it just, you get too much of too many things, right?
Yeah.
Is that your experience as well?
Kind of. It all started, I would say, where I think we all go through this, where we initially have our DAW, we have our plugins, and then you look online and you're like, okay, there's so many things out there. There's some free stuff, which you start downloading. There's some quote unquote free stuff, which you probably know what I'm saying. And you start accumulating just all these things. It's a linear phase EQ. This is like a zero feedback, whatever it is. And it's like, there's all these little marketing gimmicks. And you're like, I need this to make my music sound better. But at the end result, you learn like what, 2% of this plugin, and then you move on to something else. And you look at your list and it's just, you're scrolling through it and you have like 20 EQs that all pretty much do the same thing.
Have you ever done a plugin list purge?
I have actually, yes.
Yeah.
And it feels good. There's sometimes you're like, oh, do I need that? I don't know. And then you think, when's the last time you actually used that? And you'll be surprised. Probably not. Like you probably used it a long time ago on one track that you're like, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. You know what I mean?
I actually recommend doing it a lot. I go through that maybe every couple months. Like, do I really need this plugin? Am I using this plugin? And if I don't, then bye-bye. You know what I'm saying? Like I can just uninstall it and maybe come back to it at a later time. Maybe even write it down if you want to remember the name of the plugin. Because as a producer, like even if you're gathering free stuff, like you would right at the beginning, like there's just so much junk and there's so much bloatware that you're sort of taking on. And I think it's a great idea to sort of like, maybe even if DAWS did this, like they said, oh, you haven't used this plugin in a while. Do you want to uninstall it? That'd be a great feature.
Dude, that is a good feature. Yeah. Yeah. It's been about 30 days since you used this plugin. Are you sure you want to keep this?
I would love that. Oh my God. I mean, Ableton's new browser in 12 is so powerful that like if it just did like that time-based stuff, that would be kind of cool. But I'm sure if you only produce because we're regular producers, right? We use DAWS nearly every single day.
Every day. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So people who just like only produce once every couple months or something like that, it'd be like, it wouldn't make as much sense. But either way, doing a plugin purge from your folders, not a bad idea. But what it really comes down to, not just the amount of plugins. It's like when you're going to be creative, what the concept that we're talking about is actually focusing in on very specific plugins that you want to learn really well or very well to get better results. Because if you're trying to spread yourself too thin, sometimes you can sort of lose focus or even get caught up in technical issues that would hold you back from being creative. I think that's a big part of it,
Yeah, especially like if you have a synth that you've loaded up, you're like, I like this one because maybe it emulates a certain old one, or maybe you just like the concept of it. And then you load it up, you're like, I don't really know how to use this, or I don't remember how to use this thing. So you kind of spend more time trying to relearn it and create the sound that you want, whereas you can just pick the one that you regularly use and you'll be way further ahead if you just went that timeline.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I have a specific mindset when I'm approaching a track. Like I have 3 separate projects that I work with, my own personal solo project, Signs of Life. I have Synphaera and I have Ascendant. And I even have different kind of groups of plugins that I only use on those specific projects. So I'll say to myself, okay, these are the synthesizers that I'm going to use for Ascendant. And that's it. These are the ones that I like to use for Signs of Life. These are the ones that I like to use for Synphaera. And I just kind of focus on those plugins for that specific sound because it does, the plugins that you use, we're talking about synthesizers, maybe even the sound generators, not necessarily the effects. They do have a really strong push towards the type of sound that you're going to get.
That's true. Yep. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you say you're using Serum, you're going to get that hard edge digital sound. If you're using something like Diva, for example, you're going to get a really creamy, warm, analog style. You know what I'm saying? And I have clients and students of mine who are really rigid. They keep their plugin folder ultra clean. And one guy I even know only uses Diva and Hive and that's it. Right? Yep. He's like, that's it. Yeah. I only use those 2. And I'm like, okay, like what about the high end? Because it's harder to push some of those synthesizers into the high end. I mean, you can get there with either of them, but I've recently kind of like nudged him like, hey, you should add some serum to this. You know what I'm saying? Like you need a little serum to your sound. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you could go that extreme or not. It's up to you. But I think focus is everything, especially when it comes to producing, like I said, because you don't want to get caught up in like trying to learn something while you're trying to make a track. Like that's difficult.
Exactly. So, yeah. Cause then you're in like learning, bringing out the manual or looking up a tutorial. Then you kind of stray away from what you're trying to do originally. And that kind of sucks. Yeah.
And this goes for not just software, but like hardware too. If you're acquiring new gear and you're trying to like you think you have like one synthesizer, like, oh, maybe if I just bought this other synthesizer, I'd get that sound. And that brings up another topic that I wanted to talk about was this idea of tone chasing or, getting gas, as we call it, you know what I'm saying? Like gas is a real thing. And if you don't know what we're talking about, it's gear acquisition syndrome is the acronym for gas. And gas is something that I encountered right at the beginning of my production career. It was like people were talking about it and I picked up on it right away because I was on KVR and the forums and stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. But like, I didn't like embody that until much later on in my career as a producer. I sort of like ignored it because I was like, I was in it. You know what I'm saying? Like I was chasing sounds. I was chasing the best reverb. I was chasing the best granular synthesizer. I was chasing, whatever. Like there's always like, you want that sound. But the thing is there will always be like another synthesizer for you. There'll always be the best this, the best that.
Yeah.
And I think for beginning producers, it's really important to realize that at the beginning, and whether even if you're farther along in your journey, like realize that like, you don't need to chase sounds. Like just because you think that maybe this synthesizer is going to give you a better sound than what you already have, maybe it's because you haven't like learned how to use the synthesizer that you do have in a way that's going to get you that sound. You know what I'm saying? Because you got to lean a little bit more on the programming of it. You got to lean a little bit more in the sound design angle. But perhaps that synthesizer can do just the same thing as that new shiny thing over in the corner, right?
If not even better. That's why I tell people, get a synth that you like, spend a month with it, 3 patches a day, and stick to that schedule. At the end of it, you're going to be way happier than you thought you were at the beginning.
For sure.
I mean, they're all pretty good tools nowadays.
Yeah. And I think, going back to that extreme example of my client who's like, I only use Diva and Hive and that's all I have. Or that's who I had to limit myself to. He's really learned how to like push those synthesizers.
He probably knows Diva pretty well.
Inside and out, right? Like that's another thing is like, if you really force yourself, then you're gonna learn those synthesizers and every single part of it. You're not gonna have to refer to the manual. You're not gonna have to, figure out, how can I make this sound? Because you're gonna know exactly how to make that sound with that tool, right?
Yeah, you're going to be that guy. Like if you open up Repro, you're going to be like, if you go on the tweaks page, you can change out the waveform and change out the type of filter to get this type of sound. I was like, yes, that's exactly what you should be doing. Absolutely. 100%.
This goes, I mean, I assume this is like not just limited to audio, but I remember when I was first sort of getting into modular synthesis, like I'd see, I had a friend of mine who was very opinionated. And one thing he'd be like, he was totally anti-modular for some reason, right? We'd talk on Facebook back when Facebook was like, you could talk to people on it, right? So like, he's like, yeah, man, you see guys with like $6,000 modular rigs and all they do is just make fart sounds. And I was like, okay, like, I thought about that and I'm not calling anybody out here at all, but I'm saying I've seen it before, especially like on Reddit and places like that where guys are like, hey, like, there's this website called Modular Grid where you can like kind of like plan out your modular rig. Like you can like, they have like just like little modules and they tell you how many whole points each module is, how much it's going to cost, how much power it's going to use. It's a really helpful website if you're into modular. So like they're like speccing out their like $4,000 modular rig, right? They spec it out and they post it on Reddit and they go, is this a good starter synthesizer? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this a good start? And it's like $4,000 of like modules. And I'm like, whoa, this exists. Like people are actually going down this rabbit hole that early. They're just getting into modular and they're like, is this a good starting synthesizer? $4,000.
That's crazy. It seems like something you would graduate to. You know what I mean?
Right. But they don't know that because they don't realize, they don't have that sensibility yet to be like, I don't need to chase all this tone. I just need to start basic. What they could do, and alternatively, is download Cardinal or VCV Rack and start learning how to use each one of these modules before they actually got started. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right, because maybe they don't even know what an envelope is or an LFO is, or I mean, these bizarre modules that come with it. They're like, "What does this do?" You're like,
So I use some pretty envelope, pretty fringe concepts here. But just to drive into home the point is that if you think there's a new granular synthesizer out that might help you get a better sound, the chances are you probably could get that sound with something you have in your arsenal already. And if not, maybe you could find a free way to do it. If not, maybe you should really be thoughtful about the choices that you make about acquiring gear. I have been, and I have been, and I have not been. There have been times in my production career where I was like, I have to have that. And I bought it. And I didn't use it very much. You know what I'm saying? Or it didn't get me that sound that I really thought that it was going to get. For example, I bought a DeepMind 12 at one point. I was thinking, this is going to be dope. And it turns out that thing was freaking buzzy and it was hard to program and I didn't really like it. You know what I'm saying?
Turn this on. Oh, you're like looking at the thing, like, where the fuck is this button?
It didn't click with me. But then I bought a Hydra synth and that totally clicked with me. Like I was like, oh my God, this is my jam. Like this is my piece of kit right here. So, I mean, I still have the DeepMind. I'm probably going to sell it at some point. But you know what I'm saying? Like I bought it because I felt like I needed something that was analog, that was going to fill that void. Right. So I've made mistakes like that. Oh my God. You can't believe how many freaking like even in the early, 2010s, I was buying freaking sample libraries and all this other kind of stuff because I thought I need to get better atmospheres. I need to get better pads. I need to get better sounds, or I need to get better glitch percussion when I didn't even know that I could make it myself. And and
you realize you have a kitchen, you have a sound kitchen on your computer. I can make what I want to make. Just invest the time in learning how to do it. And then you're like, okay, what do I want to make? You have all the spices and ingredients to make it, a dash of reverb, a little splash of delay. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You feel like a wizard at that point.
Okay, so now that we've driven home the gas point, when it comes down to it, less is more. Yeah. You think about, okay, when you're approaching a project, right? Maybe you could try, maybe just using a couple different sound generation devices, whether that's an analog synthesizer, like a hardware, or maybe you're just doing a whole project with just Pigments or Diva or Zebra or whatever you have, or Vital, right? You just start with something simple and maybe try to just do a bass sound with that and start there, or a pad sound or a synth sound, whatever it is, right? Start very simple and then work your way up and keep designing with just that same synthesizer and keep designing until you have a full track. And you'd be like, well, did I need another synthesizer after that? Did I need another, do you need another sound?
That's true. And I feel like it's a cool thing that you brought that up because I started doing this, not even thinking about it, with the synthwave stuff. I have my synthwave template with the very specific synthesizers I use for that. Like you mentioned, Diva. Diva is a staple in that.
Totally.
The Juno, Arturia's Juno is a staple for that as well. Avenger, obviously. And that's about it. No, Repro as well. And then recently, so the gas concept did kind of bite me, but I did think about this one for a little bit. The OBX from GeForce, that thing is tasty, man. It's buttery. It is gooey. It's a good one, right? Yeah. Gooey. That's a funny little pun right there. But yeah, it works perfect for that. I forget what did I even call that one? Dimensions. Yeah, that was it. Jesus Christ. Yeah, and it worked out perfect for that. I was like, this is the exact sound I wanted. And after that, I'm like, okay, I'm done buying synths for a while. I literally have everything I need. I don't need anything else. Like when a new one comes out, I'm like, I'm good. Like, what does this do that Avenger or Pigments cannot do? Like, why would I spend the time, the resource, a non-valuable resource, time, to get something from that which I already have? Like, I don't understand that anymore.
Well, there's always going to be new tools, and always going to be new this. However, there might be instances where you do want to support the developer and be like, I really like his stuff. I enjoy it. I like their stuff. Not necessarily. It's
like Yugi, for example. Whatever they come out, I'm like, I'm going to pre-order it at
Zebra
that point.
comes out, like Zebra 3 comes out, like I know that I'm going to love that synthesizer, right? I know it. I just know it. I know it from the bottom of my heart. Like
It's a love story in the future, like the lake house.
Yeah.
You know?
You feel it. And if, okay, take for example, like if Arturia dropped a whole new synthesizer like tomorrow, and it was like it wasn't an emulation. It was something brand new, like very Pigments like, you know what I'm saying? Where it was like, here's the next evolution of what
God damn it. Yeah.
you know what I'm
stay up all
saying?
night.
And it was like, and the price is $129 intro. You might be like, I think I want to get in on this. You know what I'm saying?
I'm sick. I can't come into work today. I have the Florida flu or something. You know what I'm saying?
So this is what I'm talking about. It's that moment where you're just like, the next new shiny thing comes around the corner. What are you going to do? Right? Like
maybe that's a good thing in that sense, because you get that wonder, that feeling, that excitement that makes things new, I suppose.
Right.
Maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
Of course. And you also have to budget it out. Like, is this a hobby for you? Do you do this for a living? Is this something that you're passionate about and you don't mind budgeting out, a couple $100, maybe like $1,000 a year? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people spend money on other just stuff that's not even like worth anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, people have all kinds of collector hobbies. You know what I mean? Whether you're collecting cards or anime or collecting video games or whatever, you're spending money on something. But if you're spending money on something that's going to create something that you're going to sell, or you're going to give to other people, like you're going to give the gift of music to everyone else, like, you have to justify that somehow. You know what I'm saying? So
that's true.
For every person, it's different, right? You could spend, $5,000 on a vacation, or you could spend $5,000 on a brand new modular rig. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going to be the most valuable to you? You know what I'm saying?
And also to learn from, like, I not only use VCV or Cardinal. It is fun to make your sound and stuff, but it's also cool to learn and kind of take your brain out of the same type of sound process. Like, I made a video recently, like, stop making the same presets, because you start with the same waveform, you go through the same filter, you put the same modulation on the same filter, you put the same effects after, and you're like, why is my patch the same? Yeah, so like, you got to change up the things. It's, when we had Omri on, if you're changing the workflow, it's a workflow thing. You're gonna, if you have something like, for example, Serum and Vital, which are very similar in architecture, if you approach them slightly differently, you're going to have different results. You know what I mean? Like, different tools will make you a different sound at the end of the day.
For sure. Yeah. So just making conscious choices. This is very important, because when you're spending time doing this, when you're spending time creating music, whether you're just like a hobbyist or you're, like I said, a professional, you want to be intentional about it. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be like, okay, this is the tools that I'm making. This is the sound I'm going for. Because being a producer, and
not to mention, you could put that money into something more targeted, kind of like you're getting at, right? Instead of buying 20 different synths that you might use, you could maybe put that to a course that you like, or maybe there's something that you're like, I want to learn Ableton better. There's some guy out there that probably has a full great course that you could follow. Or I want to learn sound design. I want to learn this. I want to learn this genre.
We didn't cover that in the DAW episode, but like, DAW chasing, I see as another real thing. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
Like, people look over the fence and they go, oh, wow, like that DAW's got this, that DAW's got that. Maybe I need to go over there. Like, they always ask me, like, maybe they see me using Ableton and they're like, maybe I need to like get with Ableton Live because you can do this and that and this. You know what I'm saying?
Right. She makes me dinner when I get home from work.
No, I'm telling you. And it happens with Bitwig all the time. People are like, oh, Bitwig does this and that. And I get the admiration for it. I get the whole like, becoming enamored with that, because it's like, wow, it does do a lot of cool things. Ableton 12 now does a bunch of cool things. You know what I'm saying? And I'm sure that if there was another DAW that was even in those two DAWs class, like if, say, Cubase came out, it was like the dopest thing ever. It would be like, oh, wow, look at that. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe I need to start using that.
Old school. I don't know. I feel like with FL, I went through like a divorce and I'm still kind of recovering and like, I'm still kind of getting my mental bearings back together.
If FL came out tomorrow, I was like, dude, you could use this in virtual reality, bro. We got this whole thing. You know what I'm saying? And you'd be like, oh, man.
I mean, I think at this point, I don't know, but I'm so settled.
No,
like, I know the shortcuts now.
But if it had all these new sequencers and it had all of this like crazy MIDI generation / MIDI transformation stuff, it was like they redid the interface completely from the ground up. You'd be like, that looks kind of cool. Like maybe I need to try that again, or maybe I need to renew my license. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because like it's the same thing.
But it's like, I don't know, jumping, like you've switched to DAWS before. It's a big deal. It's not like buying a new synth. It's like
it's a big deal.
Your whole world is upside down for a while. You're kind of like off the market for a little bit until you actually get your bearings together. Your music, even though if you're a good producer, is going to suck for a little bit until you know the tools again. Like there's this period of like rebirth.
Right.
Sounds awful, but like it's kind of what it is.
So the other thing you could do is sort of acquire sideways, right? Which is like keeping your main DAW and then learning another DAW on the side and be like, okay, I'm going to learn that DAW. Maybe I'll try it out. Maybe I'll just like learn it to use the features of it. You know what I'm saying? But like keep my main DAW as like my other thing. That's what I did last year.
It's like your side chick. You're like, hey, what's going on?
That's what dude, Logic became my side chick last year. Simply because I wanted to make music with my friend in it. So we like, you know what I'm saying? Like we made music together with it, and the music turned out to be very good. You know what I'm saying?
Got the AI splitting now, the stem separation, right?
See, I don't even know. I haven't even updated it in the past couple months.
Apparently, it's pretty good.
It's good.
Apparently, yeah.
Okay, well, hey, you know, that's what I'm talking about.
Split like those stems, Chris.
There's always going to be new features. They keep adding new features to one up each other. So it's always like the DAW wars is the DAW race to like the best DAW ever. You know what I'm saying? I think Ableton was way far behind Bitwig until 12, and now they're like back up to where, you know what I'm saying? Like,
which is kind of a good thing, right? Because it kind of puts pressure on every other company to be like, hey, if we need to keep our base, we need to step it up a little bit.
But again, we've done this in another episode. So like, it's the same thing, right? It's like looking over the fence, seeing what's out there. If you want to budget that DAW you know what I'm saying? Say, maybe I want to like buy a license to Ableton while I'm using Bitwig or the other way around.
Right.
Go for it. It's your time, it's your money, but keep in mind, you're going to have to learn that DAW from scratch, basically.
I will say though, like after switching to Bitwig, it has drastically reduced my need for any third-party stuff. Right? If there's like a new chorus that comes out, I'm like, I'm good. I can literally build a chorus that I exactly want inside the grid, which I have done, which I want to make a this about that soon. But it's like
this
I can
is not
make
an
what
advertisement
I want.
for Bitwig, is it?
I don't know. It's funny because I was like, it's such a good product. I'm like, I really like. But I will say that there are things that it really needs. Like for example, muting automation. That's a huge thing, which hopefully that seems simple, but it should come soon at some point. But that workflow of like the little devices on the bottom, same with Ableton, like it looks so goofy to me when I first saw that. I'm like, what if these little goofy little plugins? And then
but no,
you
they're
start
so
using
powerful.
them and you're like, okay, I'm convinced. Yeah, like
okay,
it's become a minimalist thing.
So let's go back to minimalism. Speaking of less and more, so we went over the synthesizer, went over gas, we went over narrowing down your focus. That's a huge one. Tone chasing sounds, and not spreading yourself too thin. I think that's still a huge point. Now, even going so far as the type of sound that you're creating, like less is more. Let's go into that.
Ooh, that's a good point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I produce in the genre of ambient chill music. You might not produce that same genre if you're listening, but like I love minimal ambient. I love it. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so good. And I was recently over in Japan where they love minimal electronic music. They have clubs dedicated to minimal electronic music and like minimal techno, minimal house, minimal whatever, you know what I'm saying? Where it's like really like just a couple different elements and it's like super intelligent style music, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there's people dancing to it and they're like, I didn't go in the clubs, but I knew that they were there. And that's just the culture that's surrounding this. Now, I love minimal ambient. I think it's brilliant. You know what I'm saying? With just a couple different tracks, a couple different like things happening at one time. What's your take on how to do things like that, but do it effectively? What's your favorite way to do that?
I really felt with doing the exact, it's funny you brought that up because I did that with one of the first synthwave tracks I did. I think it was like 4, maybe 5 tracks at most. And like that many synthesizers, right? Not including like send tracks, but like that concept makes it easier in a way because we think, okay, we need to have this and this and this and this, and we start adding things like cooking, for example, right? If you have a piece of steak and you want to cook it, maybe just a little bit of salt and that's it. Don't put like this weird seasoning and that seasoning, this seasoning and that and that, and you put it in, you're like, what am I even eating at this point? Because it makes you really realize the quality of like maybe it's some good salt, maybe it's some like I don't know Himalayan salt or something like that. It's not like this iodized table saw that's kind of crappy, right?
Yeah.
So like with the minimalist, the individual tracks can shine a little bit more, and you can spend more time kind of crafting these exactly how you want, instead of having some weird lead kind of tucked in the back that's kind of like overshadowed by everything else because it kind of sucks on its own. So really everything is at its best quality, and when you put all those together as one, then it makes a really, really cool picture.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the cooking metaphor is a great one because like if you drown out a dish in all this different crap and spice and stuff like that, like it's not going to taste good. You know what I'm saying? It's going to taste, you're going to get, your palate's going to be overwhelmed. There's going to be too many flavors coming at you. But if you just like, the steak is a great example. Like a lot of there's a whole subreddit dedicated to steak.
Interesting.
And everybody has like an opinion on how to cook it. I guess the most accepted way to cook steak on this subreddit is the reverse sear.
Which is like you sear it and then after it you put it in the oven.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You sear it, put it in the oven, and that it don't go further than that. That's it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then the seasoning method is just a little bit of freaking salt, and they're like, these guys are purists. They're really hardcore about it. And I don't even eat meat, but I go on that website. I like cooking, you know what I'm saying? I enjoy people's thoughts about cooking, but it's a great, because it's like, you're just using the pure ingredient, you know what I'm saying? You're trying to highlight the flavor of the actual ingredient itself. And some of the best vegan food that I've ever had was just like simple fruits, you know what I'm saying? Where it's just like, you just like eat it and you're like, oh my God, like that's the essence of the fruit, or that's the essence of the vegetable. If it's a good version
of that fruit, that's all you need. That's really
all
you
need. I always told people, like, if you're a good chef, you can make anything without meat. Anything. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And not that I'm a total vegan, but I was for decades of my life. And like, if you're a good chef, like, you know ingredients, because you know each ingredient, but at its core level, like, you know exactly what it tastes like and exactly how to use it. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a good audio producer, you know exactly how to use a certain sound, and you know when to use it, and you know how to use it. You know what I'm saying? The metaphor crosses over, you know what I'm saying? Because we are doing things like cooking. We're using different effects. Effects are like spices. Sound sources are like ingredients, right? And then you're using those ingredients to create sound, to create different, textures and flavors of sound, right?
If you have a couple of ingredients, dude, you can make a killer song with that. Like you don't need all these things, all these plugins and this and that and this and that.
Right.
And I think it even goes a little further within patches themselves. Like there's some presets that I kind of look through and kind of study and see how some of these are done. And sure, they can sound cool, but then there's like 20 effect stacks, and that goes into another 20 effect stack that's ran parallel into another effect stack. And then it's like, okay, like at what point, like, do we really need all of this? I mean, you know?
Yeah, right.
You could probably lose 10 of those distortion racks, but whatever.
Totally. So even like just starting out with some basic tones and really being thoughtful about the types of effects you're adding, how you're adding those effects also matters, which is one of the reasons why I love using send effects over insert effects. By the way, if you don't know, insert effects is putting an effect right on the track. Send effects is sending them off to another bus where you're sending the pure signal to the effect, and you're still getting the signal and you're still getting the effect. They're being split up, right? And so you're kind of getting the perspective of both. So like, I like to do both of those things because I feel like they each have their advantages, right? But you have to be thoughtful about it. You have to be thoughtful about how much you're adding, how much of this reverb you're getting, how much of this delay you're adding. Right. You know what I'm saying? All of that stuff matters. And as you get deeper and deeper into this, you'll start to develop, your producer sensibilities or your spidey senses.
And then you'll learn different little tricks with the small tools that you have. Like speaking of your reverb, I don't know if you do this in ambient, but it's a fun little trick I like to do every so often, creating like a soundscape kind of thing, is actually using the dry and wet, but putting the wet all the way to 100%, something granular, and kind of just sneaking that into the background. So you're really just getting like all of the reverb of whatever you're putting into it. And it can be kind of interesting.
Do you then copy the track over and do another pure version of the track, or you're like just crank it to 100 and that's it?
No, I mean, I'll do it to 100 and then kind of just mess around with different effects and kind of like do some slow modulations with that and kind of see what comes back. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, you want your pre-delay kind of low, though. You don't want to like 100 millisecond pre-delay because then you're just going to confuse yourself.
No. That's a pretty, and maybe that's for a different episode, like producer hacks. You know what I'm saying? Like you can do stuff like that. But being very thoughtful, one element at a time, and then even during the mixing stage, this goes back to minimalism once again. Like I'm the type of producer where I'll do like maybe like 20 different tracks on my track, and then eventually I'll start pairing them out. I'll start taking them out. And I have to be, during the mixing phase, I have to be very judicious about which tracks are going to stay here and which are not. Because I feel like I need to get all the sounds out that I feel like the song needs to be complete. And then the mixing stage for me is a process of subtraction, where I'm taking away certain sounds and only minimalizing different sounds to highlight those sounds.
That probably makes it easier if you open that session later on.
Right. And that's what mixing is to me. Like, I'll just put it all out there and I'll get as much out as I possibly can, to the point where the track even sounds somewhat crowded, especially with all these sequences I got going on and pads and crazy stuff. And then I'm like, okay, use your volume sliders, use your automation, and then start making moments where you can really hear just a couple different sounds. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? At one time. And then you get different perspectives. And that's how I feel tracks become multi-dimensional, is you have a bunch of different elements, but if you're weaving them in and out, you're getting different sides and different combinations of these sounds.
Yep.
And that could be another way to minimalize your track, especially when you're,
Yeah, it's like if you have 3 tracks of something and you have one by itself, then you sneak in 2, and then you slowly fade out 1 and bring in 3, and then take out 2 and bring in 1 and 3. It's like all these combinations can be such an interesting thing over a span of time.
Yeah. So think about that when you're producing, like maybe, even if you put, like I said, 10 to 20 tracks, maybe in the end, you're only hearing 3 or 4 of them, at that one time. And then you can mix and match, and you have plenty of material to work with, to the point you get to your end of your result and you're like, damn, I didn't need that much, but at least I got it out there. And at least I had, if every track came in at least once, then you had that whole experience. You brought all that track together, but all you were hearing was just that minimal experience of it. So, I mean, we covered a lot of things in this episode. This is great. We did gas, we did synths, we did, tone chasing, and we even did the whole production angle of it. Are there any other thoughts you have, John, on minimalism and how to be a more minimalistic producer?
I think the last thing to kind of like set in everyone's minds is find the tools that you like for the specific things. Find your EQ that you like, find your compressor that you like, a reverb, a delay, and maybe a couple synths that do certain kind of things, right? With the analog sound, maybe Diva is your choice. If you want wavetable, maybe Serum, whatever wavetables that are out there. And just stick with those, because you can get so much further along if you just stick with those small group of plugins, or even just native stuff. I think that's kind of overlooked as well.
Word.
But yeah, stick with those minimal things and try that maybe for a month and see how you get along with it. You might be surprised at how much more progress you make. What about you?
All right. I think that's great advice. And even, like when you're using those plugins that you like just try to pare those plugins down, pull the sound back, and even try just, letting it all out there. You're out there, you're putting your sound out there in the world, and maybe it's just 1 or 2. And, really you are the director of your tracks. You know what I'm saying? You are the one, you're the conductor and the director. You're everything. You're bringing us on that journey with you. So no matter how much you're saying with each individual synthesizer, make sure that it's, intentional and potent. And you're leading us in the right direction to say what you want to say. So
that's
good luck, you guys. Yeah.
In unrelated news, we have Sweetwater sales. We have plug-in boutique sales. 10% off.
That's it. There's always going to be sales. There's always going to be another plugin right around the corner.
Watch out for those. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching. And we'll see you in the next video.
If you're interested in supporting the podcast, please subscribe to the Signs of Life and John Audio channels on YouTube. The link for our channels is down below in the description and in the show notes. For the video version of this show, please subscribe to the Harmonic Horizons YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest episodes. For bonus content, including additional podcast material, head over to the Signs of Life Patreon page. Paid members get access to Beyond the Horizon, our new series of extended conversations with our guests, as well as several other benefits such as early access to all of his videos, exclusive ambient tutorials, over 100 preset packs for various synthesizers, one-on-one coaching for ambient and electronic music, and tons more. If you'd like to support John Audio and the work he does, head over to his YouTube channel and subscribe. You can also check out his Gumroad page for a selection of free and paid preset packs. Finally, he has a Patreon page where subscribers get access to additional content, such as exclusive music, presets for various synths such as Pigments and Diva, specialized courses, and more. Harmonic Horizons is hosted on Buzzsprout and is now available on all major platforms including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast directories. If you'd like to reach out to us or would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact us at harmonichorizonspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.